Sustainability is one of the most important things that you want to think about when you're incorporating not only the keto diet, especially the keto diet, but any diet.
So Emma, have you heard of the keto diet?
I have. I heard it's like this crazy weight loss regimen that people are on.
Yeah, it's all about eating less carbs and more fat.
Man, I wanted to hear so much more about this. I wonder who we could talk to. Here is the keto expert, our friend Blade. Blade, tell us about yourself.
So my name is Blade Woodburn. I'm a second year PhD student in pharmacology, and my bench science is actually neuro-HIV. But I've had a long history of nutrition and fitness science. I have a metabolic disorder that really required me to get close with the science behind nutrition since I was young. And once I grew up and started to take a real interest in science, those two interests kind of went hand in hand. And I started studying the ketogenic diet on my own for the last year and a half. Just found it really interesting, and so I know a bit about it.
Great. So can you tell us a little more about the history of the ketogenic diet and where it came from?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. The ketogenic diet has really, really strong scientific merit and scientific roots. So when we start out, the ketogenic diet was initially used as the primary treatment for adult and pediatric epilepsy. With the rise of pharmacological intervention, it kind of was pushed to a secondary treatment. But in the 70s, it actually gained a lot of traction, not only within the medical field. There was scientific research still going on at the time, but it gained a lot of traction within the public sphere as well, with a movie actually called Do No Harm. And it was about a child who was resistant to all the pharmacological interventions for epilepsy. And then they put him on the ketogenic diet, and he was more or less cured. And it was a terminal case of epilepsy. And so it really gained traction within the public sphere. People were kind of going crazy about it. And then it died off again. And now we're at the current state where it's kind of gained traction again, but for a little different reason, I think.
Mm-hmm. So you want to kind of walk through what the keto diet is for those of our audience who may not be familiar with it?
Absolutely. So the ketogenic diet is defined by a macronutrient profile. And macronutrients are the main nutrients that you get from your food, and they can be split into protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So the ketogenic diet is a macronutrient profile that consists of primarily fats, so very high fats, low carbohydrates, and low to moderate protein, depending on your goals. If it's being used therapeutically, the protein has to be pretty low. If it's being incorporated into an everyday lifestyle, such as an athlete or someone who just isn't using it therapeutically, the protein can definitely be more liberal.
You talk about how fats are a huge part of the keto diet.
Right.
I mean, within our culture, fats are looked at horribly. Like, how can people switch from looking at fats as this thing that makes you fat to something that can actually help with weight loss?
Right. So let's first talk about how the ketogenic diet has gained traction within our current public sphere. So it's been introduced as this quote-unquote weight loss diet. And you can't argue with that in a certain regard, because if, like you guys mentioned, if you look on your Facebook, if you look around to friends, people are actually realizing weight loss from this diet. I think what it's important to remember, though, is that the reason that they're realizing these weight loss effects is not because they've switched from carbs to fats. It's because their net intake of calories is decreasing overall. So let's explain like how fats versus carbs pan out when you look at the scientific studies. When you equate for calories, there is no difference between weight loss in a high fat and a high carb diet. It's actually been shown in trained athletes as well as untrained athletes. So just untrained individuals. So it's important to remember, why are we seeing these weight loss effects? It's really because of the inherent properties of fats themselves, I would say. So first, fats are more satiating, meaning that they make you full, and they make you full on less food. And so that in and of itself is going to help you stay at what's called a caloric deficit, which is eating less calories than you're burning, and then you're going to actualize weight loss. Second, fats are more calorically dense. So you can eat less food and get the same amount of energy. So you wouldn't need to eat as much or feel like you need to eat much more than you need to gain the same amount of energy. And then third, if you think about your very highly palatable, convenient foods, the things that are probably most unhealthy for us, your Ho-Hos, your Twinkies, your candy bars.
Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its, exactly. Yes, they do have fats in them, but if you're adhering by ketogenic principles, then it's going to be very hard to eat those foods because they also have carbs. So as far as convenience and palatability, the ketogenic diet really is helping a lot of people, I would say, stay at a caloric deficit more so than if they were having carbs. And if that's the case, that's okay. But we just want to make sure that the demonization of one macronutrient over the other does not actually realize weight loss. What realizes weight loss is a net decrease in calories.
Right. I mean, you mentioned athletes being on this ketogenic diet. I've always heard that athletes need to carb up before a big run.
Right.
So
going back to the data when you equate for calories, high carb and high fat diets in trained athletes, there is no difference between performance. And so, and in some cases, in endurance athletes, which don't ask me the science behind this because it seems pretty complicated, but it almost seems in some cases that a ketogenic diet would help a endurance athlete perform better. Now that goes against everything I know about oxidative phosphorylation and how we use energy long term anaerobically, which is in the presence of oxygen for exercises that are more than just like short bursts of energy, so long endurance type things. But that's what the studies show. So overall, there's really no difference, it seems, between performance.
You mentioned that there's types of fats that you can get on the keto diet, like avocados and salmon and some other foods, but then there's also fats in Twinkies and Ho-Hos. Are those fats different in a way, or are they like still the same? Because I feel like people could still think, oh, well, I'm going to eat this Twinkie that has fat in it. Even though it has a ton of sugar and carbs in it, that is not good. It still has that fat.
What I would say is, yes, fats are different inherently. You have different types of fats that are longer, shorter chains. And then you have saturated and monounsaturated and stuff like that. Concerning the saturated versus monounsaturated, historically, saturated fats have been demonized and associated with heart disease. We're now finding out that that's not necessarily the case, and that monounsaturated and saturated fats actually are pretty equivalent as far as they don't really pose a health to heart disease, and it's usually in the context in which you eat them. So what else are you eating with your saturated fats? Is it 100 pounds of pasta? Yeah, that makes sense. You're going to have a lot more fat storage. But as far as like good fats versus bad fats, I wouldn't necessarily use that as a rule to dictate what you eat. And more often than not, if you are on a ketogenic diet and you're eating wholesome, healthy foods that are following the ketogenic principles, you're going to get the benefits of eating those fats rather than like getting the negative effects of eating fats that are incorporated in the Twinkies and the things that aren't necessarily healthy for you, but maybe you're using the ketogenic kind of principles to justify like scarfing down, I don't know.
Cheese.
Cheese, yeah.
So this diet is really hard to maintain. It's hard to not eat carbs for a long time, but I've heard that if you can achieve that and maintain this diet, you reach a level of ketosis.
Right.
What does that mean?
Right. So that's the importance in the ketogenic diet is it's not going to be beneficial as far from a data-driven standpoint if you're incorporating what's called a yo-yo diet, where you're going back and forth, because you'll never achieve what's called ketosis. So ketosis is an inherent switch between the pathways that your body uses to make energy. So normally our bodies would prefer, and if it's given carbs, it would definitely prefer to utilize a pathway called glycolysis. And that's where you use sugars and carbohydrates to make the main source of energy in our body, which is ATP.
And this is a really quick and easy pathway.
Yes, very quick, depending on the complexity of the sugar. So you hear the simple sugar statement a lot. Those are things that are used for like quick energy. They can be broken down more quickly into just glucose, which then just can go through glycolysis. Whereas like larger sugars, takes a little bit longer for them. So like an oatmeal, for example, you hear like a complex carbohydrate, takes a little bit longer for them to be broken down into glucose and then go through glycolysis. So that's what happens when you're eating carbs. Now, if you were to switch to a primarily fat diet, you'd be switching your energy metabolism pathway to fat predominant, and this is called beta oxidation. So this is the pathway by which fats get turned into our main source of energy, ATP. Now, you can't reach that unless fats are the only source of energy that you currently have in your body. Your body will utilize what it's given. If you give it carbohydrates, it's going to use carbohydrates. If you give it fats, it's going to use fats. But when you get into the state of ketosis, that is when you can start to actualize some of these benefits that are data-driven. The benefits realized from achieving ketosis are primarily two things. One, neuroprotection, and two, anti-inflammation. So those two things together are really the data-driven benefits, and you can see their effects in the current use of the ketogenic diet in things such as cancer treatment.
I've also heard that when people first start the keto diet, their bodies are adapting and they might get the keto flu.
Oh, yes, that's definitely true. So that's just like 2 to 3 weeks when you're that process of switching from glycolysis to beta oxidation. And I know for you guys and myself and a lot of people probably watching, you can empathize with what caffeine addiction feels like. And so when you don't have coffee, that is pretty much the feeling that you're going to get for 2 or 3 weeks, I would say, when you're switching from like the glycolytic state to beta oxidation.
So if you do this yo-yo approach, are you always going to be sick?
You're not going to feel great. You're not going to be able to utilize the data-driven benefits of ketosis, definitely. And one of the main points of ketosis, as far as like if you talk to anyone who's been ketogenic for a while, one of the things that they'll claim is, my insulin in my blood, well, they won't claim this specifically, but this is what is happening. Their blood glucose is not rising and falling as much as someone who is on a carb-heavy diet is. And so after you eat lunch, for example, you have that parasympathetic response where all the blood's rushing to your stomach kind of, and your blood glucose is rising and falling for the next couple hours and you feel lethargic. Ketogenic diet, people who adhere to it don't really see that as much. So that's one of the main benefits of it. So if you're falling in and out of ketosis, you're pretty much asking for all the negative side effects that you would get from switching. So for longevity's sake, it's best to just adhere. That's why I would recommend, if you're going to go on the ketogenic diet, to really be ready to live as a lifestyle and not just another diet, because that is where it's really lost. The ketogenic diet has strong scientific ties, and when it's treated as just another South Beach or Atkins diet, that is lost. The thing is, like I said, I would do it if I could, but I just, with my metabolic disorder, I can't. The thing that I found is if I wanted to become an athlete, or if I wanted to become a keto athlete, it would actually be pretty expensive. So healthy, fat-heavy foods that are also low to moderate in protein. So really what everyone who incorporates the keto diet should be eating are expensive.
Yeah.
And avocados, man. I mean, then are just driving up the avocado prices.
They're so expensive. But if you go to these keto specialty websites, obviously their goal is pure, and that they want to provide a wholesome product that is better than what you can get pretty much in the market. But it's expensive, and it's really hard for people to afford all of the different keto enhanced peanut butters and stuff like that with like zero carbs. I just don't think it's sustainable, and sustainability is one of the most important things that you want to think about when you're incorporating not only the keto diet, especially the keto diet, but any diet. That's why a lot of diets fail. I think it's 70% of all people who realize weight loss will regain more weight than they originally lost within the calendar year in the United States. And so we don't have a weight loss problem per se, because people are able to lose the weight. We have pretty much keeping the weight off problem.
Yeah, because you have to have a diet where you can keep it up throughout the week, every week, and also an exercise plan where you can do that too. So if a diet's too hard, it's going to be you're not going to keep it up for a long period of time.
Right. And so I would say, if I was recommending the ketogenic diet to anyone, it would be someone who wants to adhere and realize the data-driven effects. with that, you could probably also realize weight loss through a net decrease in calories and achieving a caloric deficit. But second, it would be someone who understands the ketogenic principles and they fit their lifestyle. So those principles are they're able to adhere to them more efficiently than maybe a carb-heavy diet and leading a healthy lifestyle in that regard. So, well, when it comes down to it, it's going to be a lifestyle thing. You have to commit, and it has to be sustainable.
So just like here at Summoning says how we're trying to educate the public about science in the news, Blade also has a way he's trying to reach out to the public with science. What is that?
Currently, I'm creating, along with two colleagues, two buddies of mine, that who we graduate. We're all in STEM fields. We're all getting our PhDs. One of us is getting an MD PhD. We're starting this website called PH Dudes. So it's we like to refer to it as a general scientific tool. There's everything from environmental oceanic atmospheric science to nutrition and fitness science, and it'll really just be a tool for the general public and the educated general public and people who are not as inclined to science to read about different parts of science in an accessible way, and it'll also be lighthearted. It'll be funny. We have like a podcast style kind of adventure that we're going on, and then we have the rest of it is kind of like blog oriented. So when it's up, check us out at www.phdudes.com, and I hope you like it.